Greetings, beloved. Welcome to another Gloria Omnia, our last of this month, on our topic of Chesed v'emet, God's loving kindness and His faithful truth. Obviously, our year of wound and wine. We're going to kind of tie all these together this month, this week, this episode for this month. The last episode for this month, we're still going to be doing our Psalm study. Please check that out on Facebook and X and Substack. We got some fun stuff coming up next week also. There's 4 weeks in a month, so we have some stuff coming up next week too, some kind of surprises. So check that out on Facebook and the other areas. So this week, kind of finishing up our study of Chesed v'emet. Again, these are Hebrew terms, come straight out of the Old Testament. The Old Testament is originally written in Hebrew, mostly found in the Psalms. This phrase refers to God's character, His steadfast loving kindness. He loves His people. He will go to all lengths, including Jesus dying and being risen from the dead, to redeem His people. Taking shame, being mocked, being lied about, being abandoned by the Father, with the sake of Judas Iscariot, who was actually, what's the term? It's not in my head. Anyway, one of his own friends betrayed him. That's a betrayal. So it's quite a bit God had to go through to lovingly bring us back, to bring glory to Himself through all that He went through to make that happen. That the Trinity in forever past, eternity past, was content among themselves, but they wanted to love more. So they made creation so that they could dump their love into us. They didn't have to. It was something extra they could do. So that's God's loving kindness. And His loving kindness comes in truth, not in a lie, not in fake, not in things that aren't true. So when Adam and Eve decided to be gods on their own, to make themselves gods instead of receive God's love, instead of to receive God's excellence in making them, instead of to receive God's truth in the reality that they were created. They were created to receive God's greatness. Instead, they decided they wanted to receive their own. They wanted to receive what they had made, not what God had made. They wanted to become God themselves. And that doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It's not real. It's not true. And even now, if you listen to Disney, if you listen to most culture, if you listen to a lot of the other religions, actually I should say the other religion, there's only 2 religions. There's the one that says God gives you everything and you receive it. Or, like I said, you decide to be God yourself and create your own. You bring out the greatness of your own heart and you don't need God to receive all the glory. Anyway, let's keep going. How this matches with our year's study of wine and wound. God could have made us perfect. God could have not put us in a position where we could fail. God could have not put us in a position where He had to become a man and die on a cross and redeem us. He could have done all that, but it wouldn't have been as glorious. That's how glory is most received, is through wound. Like as an example, that's how Christ was ascended to the right hand of God. He earned that through what He did. And in the same way, we partake of Christ's sufferings, is the way it's put in the New Testament. We partake of what He did when we are in union with Him, when we become united to His resurrection, when we become united to His justification. We become united to His suffering, to His wound. And that's what this whole study is about, and why this part of Chesed v'emet is so important. Because God loved us enough to do all these things for Himself and unite us to it, so that we would also partake of that wound and that sufferings. We partake of it differently. We're going to get to that in a minute. But we partake of that. And that's the means for our own glory, for us to be glorious just as God is glorious. Again, we receive it from Him because He was the first one to walk it. He walked that suffering for us. And that's the wound that we're talking about for this whole year. And all these different months, all these different topics, they all relate back to wine and wound. And that wound, it's what brings the wine. In order to have wine, you have to crush grapes. And Jesus was crushed. And we will be in ways crushed. Our ways are different than Jesus. Jesus was crushed by being abandoned by the Father. The things that I just brought up, betrayed by Judas Iscariot. He was, beaten almost literally to death. He gave up his own spirit, but beaten, mocked, lied about, so many different things in his life, but mostly towards the end, right before he died. He had to be crushed in order that the wine would pour. And then even in the Bible, it says that after Jesus had died, they came to him with a sword and they gashed his side, and water and blood were poured out. Water and blood are the two elements of the sacraments that we partake of. Water is the element in baptism. When you are baptized, you are washed with water. And when you take Holy Communion, you're said to partake of the blood and the body of Christ. Wine. The wine and the wound. It's all right there. And it was there at the cross. After the cross was finished, he was slit and water and blood came out. The sacraments. The things that hold us into his love, into his truth. He feeds us by those and makes us more and more perfect, like he's perfect. He's already fulfilled perfection on our behalf in fulfilling the law and dying to sin. But still we're made more and more perfect. In reality, our habits are taken away, our bad habits are removed, and we more and more make good habits. And that's going to be another thing of this whole year, is eventually we're going to get into habits. Right now we're dealing with foundations. And with that said, that kind of leads into what's coming up next. We're going to talk more and more about that wellspring, about that life blood that God gives us through that Chesed v'emet, through his loving kindness and his truth. He feeds us. He feeds us through this well of great water, this water that quenches our thirst, this meal of wine that is bounty for our tongue and raises our tongue from the dead. Adam was silent when Eve was tempted. He stood right there and was silent. So we got that coming next month. Even more about not only God's character, but what God did through that lovingness, loving kindness, and through his truth. So an interesting thing happened to me this week. It was kind of real fitting. I was listening to a podcast, Joe Rogan. Most people know Joe Rogan. He had a gentleman on his podcast, and it may have come out a week or two ago, but I finally got a chance to listen to it this week. And this gentleman was sharing the gospel with Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan has been attending church and some things like that. So he wanted to pray for Joe and wanted to give his perspective on the issue. And I even seen a episode of his podcast after that one. He said Joe was really gracious. Joe could have made him look like a fool, because Joe's not a Christian. And Joe knows a lot of things. He probably knows a good number of ways to try to counter the arguments of a Christian. But Joe just listened. He just listened, and he was actually cordial to a lot of the arguments that the guy was bringing up. But another thing that was brought up in this, since I'm interested now in Hebrew words and this Hebrew perspective of the Christian faith, and how I think having lost that Hebrew perspective when the Jews were scattered, after Jesus was risen from the dead, the temple was destroyed and the Jews were scattered all over the place. And unfortunately then Rome took over. The Western Church took over, and I don't think they did a great job of holding on to the faith that had been brought down through the Hebrew culture. We lost that culture that God had developed through his word. He wanted them to do certain things, and we were supposed to move forward. We were supposed to grab new wineskins for new wine. New wine came through Jesus. We weren't supposed to follow the old wine of the old covenant of temple and animal sacrifices and all the weird things that were done back then. They were done for a purpose. And there's a flavor in all of that was supposed to still be in the new wine. It was supposed to be like the old wine, tasting similar, still carrying that foundation that grew from years and years and years. Even before the Israelite country was developed, even through the country of Judah, through King David, through the kings, through all that stuff that happened. There was a flavor that God was putting in that wine that we were all to drink, the old wine and the new wine. The new wine probably tasted different than the old wine, but still it had that same, you could remember the old wine through the new wine. And I think we lost a lot of that. And that's what this whole study is about. So listening to Joe Rogan and listening to this gentleman try and tell him the gospel, Joe Rogan brought up this guy, since the gentleman was talking about the Hebrew faith and Jesus and all that. He said he knew of this guy that, I don't know if you know about what DMT is. It's a means of people attempting to kind of break through human consciousness to see the other side so that we can understand life better. What's really controlling our lives, what's beyond our consciousness. So they take DMT. It's kind of like LSD or magic mushrooms or something like that. They take it thinking it's going to change their consciousness and they're going to be able to see things that we can't normally see. So this gentleman's one of the foremost researchers on all that type of thing. But he was noticing that the Eastern cultures, Buddhism, Hinduism, so on and so forth, they weren't really well encapsulating what he was looking for in this whole looking for the other side. And he had grown up to some degree in that Judaic perspective. I don't know whether he was a Jew himself or how exactly he came to go towards that direction, but he wanted to get away from the Eastern side of things and go more from a Jewish one. Because in the Bible, it tells about prophets having visions. It talks about men having dreams and them needing to be interpreted. So he thought, let me get into the Hebrew Scriptures. Let me learn about the Hebrew Scriptures and see what these visions were about and these dreams were about, because maybe that's the missing link. Maybe it's not Buddhism. Maybe it's not Hinduism. Maybe it's something in that story of God's people, God working through God's people and so on and so forth. I don't know if that his emphasis was on God, but still he was going through those Hebrew Scriptures looking for this information. And the story is it took him 16 years to learn the Hebrew language in order to properly interpret the Hebrew Scriptures the way that he wanted to try and find this information about how to cut through that veil of human consciousness, to see beyond the things that we see in this life, to see those visions, to see those dreams, so that we would better understand ourselves, where we're really from, who really controls us, why we're really here, what's our purpose, all those big questions. So he's going to do that through DMT and through mushrooms and psychedelics and so on and so forth. And he's got a book out about it. It's interesting. But is that really the way? Is it really, are we really going to find that through, once again, us struggling from our own love and our own truth? Are we going to find that through us struggling, us climbing that ladder, us breaking through that veil through our efforts, through playing with not only psychedelics, but anything, through us splitting atoms, through us finding nuclear fusion, through quantum physics and all these different things that we're playing with? Is that how we're going to break that veil? To see more of the consciousness than we can see? Or is that veil already kind of split for us? We already have this Old Testament with this old wine that God put into this culture so that we would know how much he loves us, so that we would know his truth, that it doesn't make sense for us to climb that ladder, to split through that veil, to find another consciousness, to play with drugs, to play with science, to split atoms and play with quantum physics and play with the human genome and stick a computer chip in our brain. It's one of the new things talked about. Or play with AI. If we play with AI just enough, maybe AI will find the mysteries of the universe for us. Or the mysteries right in front of us. God wanted you to know. He's cheering you on through that love and through his benediction. It's all right in front of us. It happened through these people, through these great stories that we're putting in a book. And those are his actual word. That he's preserved his word. He's revealed it to us so we could receive it. Now we got to fight to understand it. We got to fight to master it on our own. But rather, he loves us. He's shown us his truth. We just need to receive it. He helps us to receive it. He opens our minds. He opens our hearts. He opens our wills to seek it even more, to dig a little more in him. In Jesus having taken away our sin. In Jesus having already fulfilled righteousness on our behalf. We don't have to struggle. It's already there for us. All we have to do, we don't even have to pray, but we can. We can ask, God, help me to understand better. Help me to take away my dead eyes, my dead heart. Help me to understand you really. Help me to really hear you in that word. Help me to really speak to you properly with my tongue when I pray. Through his love, through his desire to commune with us, to be in covenant, to be in a relationship, in a community relationship through the church to him, so that we could praise him, we could not only receive him, but offer back our thanks. Thank you for saving us. Thank you for giving us your word. So that's what this month has been about with Chesed V'Emet, understanding the character of God, that he desires these things for us. And he does wound us in that now he disciples us. He disciplines us. But it's the dumb little things that we do, he helps us to see how dumb those things are. He hurts us a little through it. Because we do dumb things and we worry about where we're going to have money because we did something dumb and we lost money. Or we literally hurt ourselves physically. We bled, we sweat, we cried. We long for something that we can't find easily. Those are all wounds that are real. They're very real, and they bring us to glory. They show us his truth and his love. And he gives us the wine that we would taste greatness. Even through that wound, we would taste the greatness of Christ. We would taste his body and his blood. We would get washed by the water. And we would learn more and more to be a part of him. So that was this month. We got some fun things coming up next week. A whole new month coming up in another week. A whole nother topic. More Psalm study. Follow me on Facebook with that Psalm study. Follow me on X. Follow me on Substack. Please like. Please share, those types of things. I don't want to say that over and over. I'm going to say it every once in a while. Kind of coming up at the end of this month. This is the last podcast where I can say it here. I'm not going to say it often, but maybe at the end of the month just to remind. So thank you for watching if you do. Hopefully more and more will, because I really think this is going to be, the more we dig into these things and the more, not just people who aren't a part of the church, not just people who come to the church a little bit, but I think people even like me who've studied a lot about theology. I helped plant churches. I dug into the scriptures once I wanted to, and there are a lot of people like me that still have so much more we can learn. I thought I lived a great life, and the more I'm digging into this, the more I see things that, I could have done that better. There are a lot of things I look at now, having gone through just these studies over the past 6 months that I've been doing this, where I've seen things I could have done so much better. And not that I need to find God's not going to love me more because I'm trying harder now. He already loves me perfectly through Christ. But I can come more and more walking in the way I should. And I can find my own love for Christ more. Find more and more that first love that we talked about last week in the book of Revelation. That I could become more and more part of that first love. That I could see better. That I could feel more. And I could act better in my life. And I hope you do too. Thanks again. Not Semper. What is that one? Oh shoot, I keep forgetting this. Anyway. Gloria Omnia. Thanks for watching. Have a good week. Bye.